The sun never rose on Raganine. It was a mining moon, dark and cold, lit only by neon signs and glowing ship lights in the heart of its black market. Voices shouted, laughed, and bargained as if trading metal and tools. Not living beings, but she was not metal. She was alive, chained at the ankles. The blue-skinned girl was dragged onto a raised platform. Her clothes were torn, barely covering. Her arms were thin, wrists bruised from the iron shackles. She didn't scream, didn't fight, just looked down as if she had forgotten how to. "Hope Lot 27, barked the auctioneer. A thick-scaled tragon with yellow eyes, pure Solari, female, untouched, strong lungs, clear skin, a fine pet, servant, or display for your halls." The crowd roared with excitement. Different aliens pushed forward, thick fingers waving credits and plasma chips. Someone whistled when her head lifted slightly, revealing glowing silver eyes, but she looked past them. Not at the bidders, not at the floor, but at something far away. As if trying to remember who she once was, in that crowd stood a human man, silent, still, face hidden under a hood. He leaned on a metal cane, his jacket worn from long travel. He didn't speak, didn't bid, just watched. The bidding climbed fast. 40 credits, then 50, then a full trade voucher. The girl swayed from exhaustion. He's almost giving way. The auctioneer grinned and turned to raise the bid again. That's when the human stepped forward. He didn't shout, he didn't raise his hand. He simply held up a small, glowing object, a pendant, ancient and cracked. With a swirling crystal at its center, the tragon froze. The crowd went silent. Someone gasped. "You trade that?" the auctioneer asked, his voice suddenly quiet. The human nodded once. No one moved. The pendant wasn't just old, it was sacred tech. Forbidden and priceless. It could buy a ship, maybe a small planet, yet the human was offering it for a slave. A discarded girl. The tragon hesitated, then snapped his fingers. Done. The girl was unchained and pushed toward him. She stumbled and nearly fell, but caught herself. 2 guards looked confused. They had never seen a trade like this. The human reached out, steadying her before she hit the ground. His hand was warm. She looked up for the first time. Her lips parted, but no words came. He didn't smile. He just whispered, "You're free now." Her eyes widened. No one had ever said that before. Not when she was taken, not when they caged her, not when her own people sold her. She followed him as he walked away, not sure if her legs would carry her all the way. The other traders whispered, confused. Some angry, but none dared stop them. That pendant had history and danger. They passed through the dirty streets of the market, past blinking lights and metal stalls. The girl stared at everything. Like a newborn seeing the world for the first time, she tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. At the docking bay, a ship waited, old, rusted, but alive with quiet hums. In blinking panels, he opened the door, motioned for her to enter. She hesitated, then stepped inside. The air smelled different, warm, clean, not like the cages she knew. He led her to a small chair and handed her a water pouch. She drank slowly, hands trembling. He didn't speak, didn't rush. Hirsch. She looked at him again, trying to understand why. She finally asked, voice barely more than a whisper. He turned, removed his hood. A scar ran across his cheek. His eyes were human, brown, tired, but not cruel. He shrugged. "I saw someone once," he said, "chained like you. I couldn't help them then." She watched him closely. "You don't want anything from me?" she asked. He shook his head. "No chains here, only choice." She didn't know how to answer. She pulled her knees to her chest and sat quietly for the first time in years. No one shouted at her no. One hit her no. One told her what to do. The silence. It was strange, almost frightening, but also safely. Walked to the cockpit and started the engines as the ship lifted from the moon. She peeked through the side window. The market below faded into black. Her past was somewhere in that dark, but now there was light ahead. Didn't trust it, not yet. But something inside her whispered, maybe this time the light is real. And without realizing it, she whispered a name, one she didn't remember saying before. Ashta. The man looked back from the pilot's seat. "What did you say?" She blinked, surprised at herself. "I think that was my name." He nodded slowly, then turned forward. Then we'll start with that. The ship vanished into the stars in Ashta. Once Lot 27 began her journey not as a slave, but as someone who had a name again. She sat in the corner of the ship, knees pulled to her chest. Eyes fixed on the Florno chains held her now, but she didn't move much. As if afraid her freedom was a trick, Kane didn't force her to speak. He just left water by her side, small. Meals and old but clean clothes each time he passed by. She flinched slightly, then stayed quiet. She didn't trust him. Not yet, but she didn't run either. Maybe because she had nowhere to run. Kane worked on the ship like always. Wires, checking maps, adjusting the engine by hand. He spoke softly when needed. Never raised his voice. The girl watched from the shadows. Silent, her name, the one she whispered before, still felt strange in her mouth. The Shosh wasn't sure if it was real, or if she made it up. She remembered nothing before the cage. Only the sound of metal doors and loud commands one day, while Kane was welding a panel near the floor. Sparks sleuth, flash and sound hit her like a weapon. She dropped to the ground. Covering her head with her arms, her body shaking without control, Kane turned. Eyes wide, he stepped away from the tool and slowly crouched beside her. "It's all right," he said, his voice quiet. "No threat in it. No one's going to hurt you here." She didn't answer. Her breathing was fast. Her body stiffened. Slowly, she opened one eye. He wasn't angry. He looked. Patient. Later that night, she sat near the engine room door, still silent, but closer. Kane noticed and placed a folded cloth down beside him. Not saying a word, she sat and watched. His hands moved with calm skill, twisting wires, patching burned metal. The ship groaned like it was alive and tired. "What's its name?" she asked. Suddenly Kane paused. He looked at her. Surprised, then smiled faintly. "She doesn't have one." The girl tilted her head. "That's sad. Everything should have a name." He nodded. "You want to name her?" She looked at the wall, then back at the glowing panels. Maybe later. It was the first real conversation between them later. While Kane rested in the control chair, the girl found a small round part on the floor, broken and dusty. She studied it, then reached for a tool. Kane opened one eye. She was fixing it slowly, carefully, as if her hands remembered something her mind didn't. Within minutes, the part was repaired. She held it up. Kane raised an eyebrow. "How did you?" "I don't know," she said quickly. "My hands moved before I could think. It felt like I've done this before." Kane leaned forward, took the part, and examined it. "Good work," he said. Simply. She didn't smile. But something shifted in her eyes that night. She stared out the window at the stars. "Why did they sell me?" she asked quietly. Kane didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked her gently, "Do you remember anything from before?" She shook her head. "Only flashes like silver walls, soft voices, pain in my head." Her hand touched the back of her neck. Something was there, a small bump, hard and unnatural under her skin. Kane moved closer. "May I check?" She hesitated, then nodded. He touched the spot carefully. There was a scar, almost healed, but something metallic inside a chip. He said. She turned quickly. "What kind?" "Might sure. Maybe a memory block, maybe a tracker, maybe both. Can you remove it?" Kane thought for a moment. "If I try, it could hurt. Maybe even damage your memory worse. But if we leave it, they might still be tracking you." She looked down, unsure. "I want it out." She said at last, "I don't care if it hurts. I don't want anything they put inside me to stay." Kane nodded. "I'll prepare the tools, but we'll go slow later." Under low lights, he cleaned the area and injected a local numb agent. Sheet bit down on a piece of cloth, gripping the table. Hard. Kane used a small extractor tool. Guided by a cracked scanner, the device was deep, buried against her nerve stem. She trembled. Breathing heavy. Kane's hands were steady, careful, focused, and then, click, he pulled the chip free. Covered in blood and burned at the edge. She collapsed back. Sweating and exhausted, her chest rose and fell. Quickly, Kane dropped the chip into a sealed jar. It pulsed red for a second, then died. He looked down at her. To say something but stopped. Her eyes were open, glowing. Silver light filled her pupils. Faint but clear, and when she spoke, her voice was stronger. "I remember a name." Kane leaned closer. She whispered it. Not hers. Solari Prime. A place. Maybe a city. Maybe my home. Kane nodded slowly. Then that's where we start next. She blinked again, and her body relaxed for the first time since he met her. She slept peacefully, and Kane, sitting beside her, knew something important had just begun. The ship drifted quietly through deep space, engines humming like a lullaby. Kane sat at the front, watching the stars, while behind him, Ashta slept wrapped in an old blanket, but sleep didn't come easy to her. Not anymore. Her body rested, but her mind didn't tan this time. The dreams were different. No cages, no beatings, no dark rooms. She stood in a white hall, cold and endless, filled with glass and soft music. Voices echoed around her, not cruel ones, but calm and careful. She turned. Following the sound, she saw hands reaching toward her, not to hurt but to test, and then a shadow fell over it. A last flash of pain struck her head, then silence. She woke up gasping. Her hands trembled, gripping the side of the bed. Kane rushed in, crouched beside her. "It's okay," he said, voice calm. "You were dreaming again?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "I wasn't dreaming. I remembered something. It felt real." Kane looked at her carefully. "What did you see?" "Glass rooms, white floors, machines all around me, and a symbol on the wall, like 3 stars in a triangle." Kane blinked. He stood up and walked to the ship's storage unit. Pulling out a cracked data pad, typed quickly, pulled up an old file and turned the screen toward her. "Is this the symbol?" Ashta stared at either, breath caught in her throat. "Yes, exactly that." Kane narrowed his eyes. "That's not just a lab, that's a controlled genetics facility on Solari Prime," he paced, thinking aloud. "If you were there, then you weren't a regular captive. You were part of something else." Ashta stood, slowly, her knees still a little weak. "Why can't I remember more?" Kane pointed to the sealed container on the table, the chip he had removed from her neck. "It blocked you for years. Your brain is still reconnecting old paths." She touched her head gently. "It hurts sometimes, but when I sleep I see things clearer. Even hear a voice calling my name." Kane raised an eyebrow. "A voice?" She nodded. "It says my name, but not like before, not like Ashta. It's longer, softer. ... At. A dash she dash ta. Single quotes." Lin. Kane froze in placely, eyes wide. "That's a royal format Solari name. Ancient dialect." Her eyes widened. "But I was just a servant, just a slave, wasn't I?" He shook his head. "Not with a name like that. They erased more than memories." "Ashta, they erased your bloodline." She stared at him, tried to speak, but couldn't find words. Her hands tightened into fists. "If I was someone important, why did my own people sell me?" Kane didn't answer immediately. He walked over to the chip again. "There's only one reason to erase someone with a name like yours. Power." Ashta looked confused. Kane explained in Solari politics. "Solari politics? Lineage is everything. If you were a threat to someone's power, they wouldn't kill you." He looked her in the eye. "They'd sell you, erase your mind, and pretend you never existed." She felt dizzy. Everything she believed, even the little she remembered, was breaking then. "Who am I?" Kane smiled gently. "That's up to you now," but something deeper stirred in her chest. Not pain, not fear, something older, a voice inside her, not from memory, but from instinct. She turned suddenly. Walking toward the back of the ship, she placed her hand on the wall panel near the Navcora. Kane followed, unsure what she was doing. Then the lights flickered. The Navcora responded to her touch, screens lighting up. Even though Kane hadn't activated anything, he stepped back. "Ashta, what are you doing?" "I don't know," she said, staring at the glowing interface, "but it feels like the ship is listening to me." Kane checked the readings. The system was responding to her neural pattern as if her presence had authority. Only high-level military commanders could do that, or someone genetically coded to access tech like this. He stared at her in awe. "You're not just Solari. You're command bonded. That's ancient tech integration. Not even legal anymore." She turned, stunned. "What does that mean?" "It means your DNA can connect with certain machines, override systems, even control fleets. That's why they erased you. You're dangerous to them." Ashta took a step back. "I didn't ask for this," Kane replied. "But it's still who you are." The lights on the panel dimmed as she moved away. Kane looked at the nav map. Then back at her, you said Solari Prime. That's where it began. Do you want to go there? Ashta stood in silence for a moment, then nodded. I want answers. And I want to see who they turn me into. Kane set the course, the engines hummed louder. And the stars shifted. Dashta sat quietly near the glass window, the voice in her dreams. Return this time. It said not her name, but one word return in, for the first time. She wasn't afraid of what was waiting. She was ready. Solari Prime did not welcome ships with silence. It surrounded them with light. Traffic and 1,000 watching eyes. Kane's freighter landed quietly near the outer district. Far from the central towers and glowing domes, Sashta stepped out. Wrapped in a dull gray cloak, her face lowered but alert, her feet touched Solari soil, and something inside her trembled. The air felt familiar. Her muscles remembered the pull of this gravity. The rhythm of the city's pulse, but the memory didn't come from thoughts. It came from the bones, from the blood. They moved through the crowd. Kane ahead, guiding with calm steps. Ashata kept pace behind him, hood covering her face, eyes scanning. Everything tall buildings stretched into the clouds. Trimmed with glowing symbols, holograms floated above market stalls. Security drones passed overhead. Scanning without care, no one noticed her at least. Not yet. Kane led her through a side street. Into an abandoned archive, center dust clung to every surface. But the central terminal still flickered with faint power. He handed her an old code stick. If your name truly was a Shackled, this might unlock something. She nodded, stepped forward, pressed her hand against the interface. A second passed, then another. The screen flared bright. A blue light scanned her palm. In her eyes, genetic signature confirmed. The machine announced, Welcome, Asheta Vayana. Daughter of Counselor Varen. The room went still. Kane's heart stopped for a beat. She stood frozen. That name. She hadn't spoken it. Hadn't known it yet. The system remembered. Hera's sound echoed through the chamber. Files opened. Images, documents, and old Hallis filled the room. Ashta saw herself younger, dressed in ceremonial robes, standing beside a tall Solari male in golden armor. Her father. She remembered him now, from dreams, but from cold hands and colder words. He had once held her close, had once kissed her forehead, and then had handed her over to men with syringes. The memory came sharp, cutting through her like. Glaskin stood beside her now. Quiet. What is this place? She asked, voice low. A government archive, he said. Only high-blood citizens could access it. She turned to him. Why would my own father erase me? Kane met her eyes. To stay in power. If someone finds out his daughter is a hybrid, made through forbidden genome splicing. His seat in the council is gone. Ashta walked past the images, past the glowing text. Hybrid, she whispered. Testing the word so? That's what she was. Not pure, not acceptable, not fit for their perfect society. She wasn't a slave because she was weak. She was enslaved because she was powerful. She stopped in front of a holovideoid, showed her younger self. Calm, confident, standing in front of machines that bent to her voice. She was speaking commands that shut down military drones. Kane watched the video too. You weren't meant to serve. Said you were meant to lead. Ashta shook her head then. Why do I feel like a broken piece? He stepped beside her. Because they tried to break you, but you're still standing up. Silence followed, not empty but heavy with truth. Ashta moved to a private console, typed a command. More images opened to logs. Shipments. Records of slaves exported off-world. Her name was there, sold to a house on Draction for labeled unclaimed experimental subject. She pressed another key. Security clearance unlocked further files. Dozens of names like her Solari children. Discarded, erased, forgotten. She looked up. They didn't just do this to me, they've done it to others. Kane nodded. And they'll keep doing it unless someone stops them. She stared at the screen, then turned. I want to expose them, not just my father. The entire system that made me vanish. Kane nodded again. I'll help you, but it won't be easy. They'll come for us once they know you're awake. Ashta walked to the door. She pulled down her hood. Let her silver glowing eyes be seen. I want them to know. I'm not hiding anymore. Later that night, they returned to the Shapashta. Didn't sit in the corner this time. She stood beside Kane in the cockpit, her voice steady. We're not running. Kane, we're going to burn the silence they built. Kane turned, saw the fire in her eyes then. Let's give them something to fear. He lifted the ship from Solari Primaz. The engines roared.
Ashtas.
stared out the window. No longer the girl from the cod, she was someone else now. Someone who remembered what they tried to bury, someone ready to make them regret it. The ship was silent, but Kane felt the shift, not in the engines or the metal in the air. Something had changed the moment they left. Solari Primeshta stood in the center of the control room. One hand resting lightly on the console. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't hiding. Her breathing was calm, but Kane could see it in her eyes. She knew something was coming, and he felt it too. He walked to the CUM station, opened a secure channel, and scanned the nearby traffic logs. 3 patrol ships, 1 marked civilian escort, to others had no tags to clean. Too quiet, he tapped the screen. Ashta, we've got a tail. No lights, no broadcast, and no ID. She stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Let me see. Kane moved aside as she studied the pattern. The ships weren't closing in. They were waiting, tracking. She reached for the control pad and tapped a code without speaking. Entire screen shifted. She wasn't just looking. She was inside the system. Kane stared at her. How did you do that? She kept her eyes on the screen. I think I was trained for this once. Before they broke me, she locked onto one of the trailing ships. Say, faint signal flickered. She amplified it. Kane leaned forward. 8 Kane leaned forward. A bounty beacon hidden in low code attached to her DNA signature. His jaw clenched. They marked you. She looked at him. Voice steady, not just marked. They declared open hunt across 6 systems, untraceable. Unspoken like a ghost contract. Kane stood still. No trial, no arrest, just termination. She turned to him. This is what they do to anyone they fear. The ship jerked. Slightly warning lights flashed red on the side screen. They were being jammed. Kane jumped into action. We're not going down quietly. He slammed a command into the nav core, flipping the ship into manual control. The engines flared. He took the freighter straight into the asteroid belt. The rocks floated ahead like sleeping giants, massive and slow, but deadly if touched. The pursuers followed. Kane weaved between boulders. Sharp turns scraping the edge of metal. Ashta stayed at his side, eyes fixed on the tracker. They're splitting to coming left. 1 high. Kane cursed under his breath. She's not built for running like this. Ashta reached out, placed her hand on the control surface. The ship responded instantly. Panels shifted, energy rerouted. Hidden reserve flared. 2 life. Kane blinked. You found a hidden core? No, she said. I think it found me. The ship moved faster now. Not like a freighter, like a blade slicing through dark water. The first hunter ship fired. A red beam streaked past the cockpit. Kane rolled the ship, cutting tight between 2 spinning rocks. Debris scraped the side, but they stayed intact. The second hunter tried to follow. It wasn't as lucky. A sharp turn. 2 late. Its wing clipped a drifting asteroid. The ship spun out, then exploded in a flash of orange light. Tushta didn't cheer. She watched the remaining signal. He's smarter. He's staying high, out of reach, waiting for us to exit. Kane shook his head. We need cover now. She nodded. There's a refueling station not far off grid. Pyrotoned. We land there. We lose them. Kane punched in the coordinates. The freighter twisted, then dropped into a low orbit path. Minutes passed. The hunter didn't fire again, but he stayed close, watching, waiting. They landed in the shadow of a broken fuel ring. Metal arms hung like bones in space. The hangar doors opened with a groan inside. The place was half dead, lights flickering. Drones rusted. Kane powered down everything except life support, then turned to Ashta. You all right? She nodded, but her hand trembled slightly. He noticed she looked down. I hate that I remember now. Kane sat beside her. You were strong when you didn't know, and you're stronger now that you do. She looked at him, voice quiet. I can't run forever. He nodded. You won't. We'll find a way to stop this, not just for you. Ashta glanced at the chip container Kane still carried. Then let's start with them. She pulled up the bounty code again. Her fingers moved faster. Now Shio wasn't just breaking the signal. She was sending a new one. Pulse echoed through the pirate station's core system. Kane stared. You're reversing the beacon? She nodded. Let's see how they like being hunted. Moments later, a new signal appeared. Faked IDFL's targets sent back toward Solari. Prime with her father's genetic tag, copied perfectly. Kane smiled. You're learning fast. She met his eyes. I was built for this. They just forgot who they built me to be. The capital world of Ether Prime didn't sleep. Its skies glowed with gold lines and floating palaces, cities stacked like towers of glass. Every law, every lie, every secret began here, and Ashta was going back to burn what remained of her past. Kane stood beside her in the ship's narrow corridor. They both wore dark travel suits, unmarked, unregistered, but their eyes carried the weight of something larger than any armor. She stepped into the light near the exit ramp. Face calm, lips steady. "This is where it ends," she said. Kane nodded. "No, this is where it begins." The ship entered orbit under a stolen diplomatic clearance. Ashta had hacked into an old ambassador's code and edited it to match her original bloodline signatures. They descended. Her name flickered in systems that hadn't spoken it in years. A Sitlan Vayana status. Deceased. The lie was now undone. They touched down in the inner ring of the capital, just one level below the high chamber. No alarms, not yet. Kane carried a data shard, a cube full of evidence, video files, sales ledgers, and genetic records of erased children, all from the dark market where she had been sold like Skripashta. Carried nothing. She didn't need a weapon. Her voice was enough. Now they passed through the guards without challenge. Her presence opened doors. Security sensors recognized her biometrics. Even after all this time, she hadn't returned to ask for forgiveness. She had come to take her name back at the top level of the high chamber. In a room layered with polished metal and blue fireglass, her father stood with 3 advisors. Watching trade numbers on a wide screen, he turned when the door opened for a second. He froze, his mouth moved, but no words came out. Tashta stepped forward. No hesitation, no fear. "Hello, Father." He stared at her like a ghost had walked into his throne. His voice cracked. "You were gone. You were destroyed. We confirmed. You confirmed a lie." She cut in. "One you paid for." Kane moved to the side, placed the cube on the central table. Activated Ethala recordings appeared in the air. Images of young Solari children in cages, branding marks, neural chips, and a direct payment line traced back to the council. The advisors turned pale. "Forgery." One of them said quickly, "It means nothing, Ashta." Turn to him. "Speak again, and I'll open the next layer. It contains your voice giving orders to erase 10 bloodlines." Silence dropped like a curtain. Her father stepped forward, his expression twisting. "You don't understand the cost of bloodline corruption. You were made with a human-based gene. You were never meant to be seen." She raised her hand, and the lights in the room flickered. Her mind brushed the chamber controls. The AI interface paused, frozen under her command. "You built me to obey," she said, "but you failed to erase my will." Kane stepped forward. "We've sent this data to 12 neutral systems. By the time you try to bury it, the truth will already be orbiting half the galaxy." One of the advisors backed away. The others whispered to each other, unsure whether to run or stay. Her father pointed to shaking finger. "You're a danger to everything we've built. Your power, your defiance. It's a virus." She took a slow step toward him. "My defiance is survival, and your empire, built on silence and cages, will not survive me." Security guards rushed in at the far end, but none of them raised their weapons. They looked at the screen, saw the data, the files, the signatures, then looked at her hand, lowered their hands. Her father collapsed into the nearest chair. "Years of control wiped out in seconds. You were just a child." Ashta's voice softened for the first time. "I was, and I waited for you to save me, but you sold me instead." Kane placed a quiet hand on her shoulder. "It's done." But she wasn't finished. She turned to the live broadcast panel, the central hub of the planetary comm system. She pressed her hand to attend. The system obeyed. Moment later, her face appeared on every major screen across the planet. Citizens paused in offices, homes. Skytrange spoke clearly, voice strong and full. "I am a Shetland Vayana, daughter of this council, survivor of its silence, and this is what they did to their own blood." The cube broadcast the evidence live. No one could look away when it ended. She stepped back. She didn't call for violence. She didn't tell them what to do. She simply said, "Remember the names they tried to erase, and choose who you want to be from this day forward." She turned, walked past her father without looking again. Kane followed her out behind them. Chaos was already rising. Screens cracked with overload. Drones dropped from the sky, and the people finally began to speak. The war never came, not in the way. The council feared no blood in the streets, no. Ships falling from the sky, but something deeper broke that day. The silence across Ether Prime and the outer systems. People began to ask questions, then they demanded. Answers in the old names once feared and respected. Began to fall one by Anishta, didn't watch the collapse, she had already seen enough. She and Cain left the capital within the hour. Not chased, not hunted, simply unnoticed, as if the world had already shifted beyond them, back aboard the ship. She sat in the same chair where she had first slept after being freed, but now she didn't fold. Her arms she didn't curl inward. She looked out at the stars. Cain walked in carrying 2 mugs, one with steaming cove root, the other just warm water. As she liked, Eth handed her the drink and sat across from her. They sat in silence for a momenta. Real one, comfortable. He looked at her differently now. As a passenger, a responsibility, as someone whole. What will you do next? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she smiled, a small, honest one. I don't think I want to lead a rebellion, she said. He nodded. You already did by surviving. Her fingers traced the edge of the mug. I want to find the others, the ones like me, who were erased and sold and forgotten. Cain leaned back. Then we make this ship their home. She raised an eyebrow. This thing. She teased. It rattles in sublight and smells like burnt wiring. He grinned. Still flies, doesn't it? Glanced around, thoughtful, then nodded. We'll fix it. Change the panels. Clean the rooms. Give it new systems. Cain tilted his head in a name. She looked out the window one more time. Her voice was soft. But sure, freedom's call. Cain repeated it under his breath. It fit that night. She walked alone to the back of the ship, in the quiet storage room where her old chain cuffs still lay. Inside a forgotten drawer, she didn't destroy them. She didn't throw them away. She sealed them in a box. Marked with one word. Before then, she shut the drawer and never opened it. Again, weeks passed. They moved from world to world, station to station, not hiding but watching, helping, listening. Listening. Whispers spread of a girl with silver eyes who once broke a planet silent. Some called her the Forgotten Flame, others called her a ghost, but those who met her never forgot her kindness or her voice. One morning, Cain woke to the sound of footsteps. He walked to the deck and found her already dressed. Boots, laced coat clean. She was smiling at something on the screen. What is it? He asked. She turned a message. Someone sent a coded call. Says they escaped from a slave pod on Titanus. 5. Cain's brow furrowed. That's deep space. Pirates run that zone. She nodded. Then we better move fast. He stepped beside her. Ready always. She looked up at him. Her eyes softer now. Cain? Yeah, you still want nothing from me? He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. I've already got what I want. She waited. What's that? You safe, strong, and free. Exactly how you were meant to be for a moment. She didn't reply then. She stepped forward and rested her head on his chest. No fear, no weight of the past, just warmth. I want to stay here. She whispered, not on the ship with you. His arms wrapped around her without a word. They stood like that for a long time. No alarms, no danger, just peace. Later, the ship lifted into the stars once more, its new name etched across the side. Freedom's Kalashta sat at the helm, one hand on the console. Cain beside her. She looked ahead, then tapped the coms. Hold on. Titanus 5. We're coming. And across the dark of space, a signal answered back, weak, cracked but alive. Her story had started in chains. It ended with a voice heard across galaxies. Not just a survivor, not just a princess. She was hope. She was Freedom Man this time. No one would forget her name.